Hello everybody, hope that you are doing very well and welcome to this evening's Contenders live stream where we are going to be going through pivot points. Thank you Trader R for the insight into the pivot points. I think this is obviously it's been around for a long time, but they were really popularized by Trader R inside of the group over the past year or so. Because he found great success with them, finding his own method of using them. So naturally from that, there has been loads of questions. So that's what we're going to be going through tonight, pivot points. So I hope that you really enjoy the live stream and you learn something new from this one. It should be really interesting. It should be a really interesting live stream for you. So let me just some of you are probably already aware if they've been watching the streams over the last few days. I have reset a lot of the settings. I had to factory reset my PC. If someone could just confirm that this sounds okay, there's no stuttering of the microphone, it's not going in and out, and it sounds audible. There he is, my man Technic with the sounds okay. Well, that's absolutely brilliant then. I'm always slightly worried about that, but there we go. So let's begin. Pivot points. Obviously the disclaimer, everybody knows the legal stuff by now. So the Contenders live stream that we got tonight, really simply, we're going to be going over pivot points, how to use the pivot points, and then ending with questions about tonight's topic. So this is going to be, obviously the questions are about tonight's live stream. If it's an off-topic question, ask that in Discord because it won't be presented obviously in tonight with the questions. You might be wondering, where's chart of the week gone? Because chart of the week is not in this stream, and that's obviously because of the fact chart of the week now is in its own separate live stream. So Mike has already done the chart of the week today in its own live stream, which you can obviously watch across now on the website. So if you haven't watched chart of the week yet, that's released every Wednesday along with the Contenders streams, but it's in its own separate video. Again, the reason why we put it in its own video, well, really simply, you can dedicate more time to it and give it more attention. So we felt that it was, rather than putting it inside of this stream, chart of the week will have its own video and its own section of Discord. Obviously, its own section of Discord is chart of the week there under the Contenders. And yeah, that's really simply why it's not included in the Contenders live stream anymore. It's because it has its own video, which should be even more beneficial than it was before. Also keeps the live streams more focused towards the topic that we're teaching. Yeah, that was based off of feedback. People wanted that, so that's what we done. So I hope that you enjoyed that change. And if you haven't watched Chart of the Week, go watch it right now because it was another really good one. Thank you so much, Mike, the altcoin god. So, pivot points. Pivot points then. So, pivot points, I'm sure many people kind of know what they are, but this is just for everybody that doesn't know. Pivot points, they can be basically used as targets of a move. So if you're looking to long above P, they can be used for targets of your trade, essentially. Pivot points can give an indication of an invalidation of a setup, e.g. if you're longing the P, again, this is going to make sense as we go through the video, but if you're longing point P and your target is, let's say, R1, then you could use a stop loss of maybe S1. So basically, it's possible to design, if you wanted to, a whole strategy just using pivot points. You know, they give entries, they give targets, and they give stop losses. So yeah, that's a that's something that you can use on with pivot points. They do have a whole strategy behind them. And then this is the shout out to Trader R. This is obviously his strategy. So this is, I just want to emphasize that this is totally Trader R's strategy. This is not my strategy. I did not come up with this. Just so everybody knows this, I'm not trying to take credit. Trader R is the guy who found the strategy with the Chinese pivots, okay? And this is what price can be drawn towards. And this is why pivot points became so popular in the group, because if it wasn't for Trader R, I don't think anybody would look at them. So yeah, that's what we'll be going over tonight in these points. So first of all, how do you get the pivot points? How do you set them up? So really simply, what you want to do is go over to TradingView, click on indicators. Okay, click on built-in, type in pivot points standard, and there they are, pivot point standard. Okay, so they're called pivot point standard. I personally, I've used pivot points in the past. We're talking 5 years ago. I was using pivot points. When I was into stock trading. I don't really use it on cryptocurrency, but pivot points, when I used to use them, I used to always use them on the Fibonacci type. Why? Because I like using Fibonacci settings. I love my Fibonacci retracements. I love my Fibonacci extension, and obviously the formula behind where the pivot points, the R1 and S1, the way the calculation is formed is different. Just so you can see this, by the way, if we just click on pivot point standard here, what you will see is you could choose traditional Fibonacci, Woody, Classic, DM, Camarilla. There's you can choose which ones you want. Trader R will use traditional pivots, so he will just use the traditional. If I'm looking at an actual pivot, in terms of the R1, S1 targets, I like to use Fibonacci, but that's because I'm a big fan of Fibonacci. My work revolves around fibs. So there you go. That's why I would use it on Fibonacci, but you can, play around and see what fits best for you, really, can you? This is an example here on Ethereum. You can see how you had your P1, you come down to S1, so you found support off your S1 really well. You moved up to R1, you found a bit of resistance, you broke through R1, and you went to R2. So you can just see here on a live example that the pivot points are pretty well, they're pretty good. Support off of S1, resistance off of R1, resistance off of R2. Okay, and if you zoom in here really locally, you can also then see how R1 was resistance into support. Pretty nice, no? So that's what you can. It's just a random live example actually that you have there on Ethereum. But these are the settings that I personally use: Fibonacci, untick, and then change the colors of the P1, S1, R1, and R2. I don't use R3s, R4s, or R5s. I would never need that much. Well, I guess if you break R1, you can add on R3, for example, and S3. But the thing is, if you add this on, it's gonna like change the scaling a lot because they're so far away from current price. I don't like the scaling like that. That's why I don't use them. I don't have them checked by default. So yeah, those are the settings that I use if you want to mimic those. So really simply, the pivot points are really, 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 really simple. Okay, they're so simple. You have the pivot itself, which is going to be your center line. And then above that pivot, you have R1 and R2. You can class this as resistance 1 and resistance 2. So naturally, resistance 1 and resistance 2 can be used as take profit targets if you're longing, let's say, from the original pivot itself. So here, session opens, you hold the pivot as support. You could, for example, say, okay, pivot support is holding. I'm going to long off of the pivot, and R1 is going to be my take profit 1, and R2 is going to be my take profit 2. You could use it something like that, and that's how they're take profit targets. Or alternatively, a way you could potentially view this is look for a long off of pivot, that's simply the P, and you could say to yourself, okay, if we reach R2, you could say, again, you have to see confluence. If you just trade off these pivot points, you'll lose money. Definitely, you'll lose money because you have to see more than just this. But if you start to see like confluence, let's say at R2, where you're on a 1-to-1 Fibonacci extension, and then you're starting to see from a bigger time frame like a CC on a 1-to-1 extension on the Fibonacci R2, well, then you have 3 different points of confluence, and you could say to yourself, if we've reached R2 in a relatively quick amount of time, well, then R2 could actually perform a resistance, which could be used for a short position, because you could say this moves locally overextended. So you could short R2 and your target could be R1. You could say, right, this is too overextended. It's gone too quick. I'll short R2 and my target will be back down at R1, or even pivot, the pivot itself, and keep the range going. But generally speaking, yeah, these are your take profit targets if you long the pivot, and simple as that, really. Then it's really not that difficult theory. Just a random example from literally, this is yesterday. The pivots are going to change every single day. And this is just an example randomly yesterday that we hit R1 and we obviously got a pullback to around, what did we bottomed in the end around 48,000. So you got like a $2,000 rejection off of R1 yesterday on Bitcoin. So really simply, if R1 and R2 have resistance, well, guess what? S1 and S2, they can be used as take profit targets if you're shorting, or alternatively, obviously, they can be used as long entries. And you have to always remember context. Right now, we're in a massive bull market on Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin looks really bullish. So naturally, you might be more opposed to longing off of our S1 and S2 rather than shorting. Some people might think that's a better. So yeah, you could essentially look for longs off of S1 and S2 if that's the way you prefer. So going into a bit more specifics then, with the pivot points, okay, the 15-minute chart is the best for pivots intraday. So don't go on to other sort of time frames. Just if you're trading intraday and you want to know those intraday pivots, that will change every single day. Every day you'll have a new set of pivots. So, and these are obviously going to change on your standard charts. You know, if you're looking at Bybit, you're going to get a new pivot at daily open, and you're going to get a new pivot at daily open. So they'll last 24 hours. And for these daily pivots, you just generally want to stick on the 15-minute chart. You don't need to go any lower. You don't need to go any higher. 15-minute chart is the best time frame for your intraday pivots. Okay, so that's really, really, really important. 15-minute chart for your intraday pivots. If you're a swing trader, what's the best time frame? That is the 1 hour chart. So if you're a swing trader, just stay on the 1 hour chart. You could go up to the 4 hour, but 1 hour is what I recommend. So just stick on the 1 hour chart, and then you're going to be looking at your swing trade pivots. So these are going to be trades that could last a few days. And these are also going to be coming new every Monday open. Okay, so every week you're going to get a new set of swing trading pivots, and they'll be given to you every Monday. So the intraday pivots are given to you once a day at the daily open, and the swing trade pivots, they're given to you once a week on Monday open. Okay, so as the clock chimes from Sunday to Monday, you'll get your new set of swing trade pivots. So this is really, 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 really important information. If you want to use these pivots